Welcome back to Cow Park Bros. Jason and I are fresh off the segment discussing and dissecting the Netflix password debate. Um, in this third segment, we're going to be talking about something, frankly, a little more important than streaming services, and that is defamation and domestic violence. And the reason why I wanted to bring up this particular topic on the show is because, one, it's domestic violence from the perspective of the man basically being abused in this scenario, and it's the defamation case for Johnny Depp against his former wife Amber Heard. And Jason, until I brought this up, like, how much did you even know about this?
Extremely little. I think over the weekend, this past weekend, I was doing stuff on the computer with the TV on in the background. Saw an image of Johnny Depp in the courtroom. Like, what did he do? Because I didn't hear about anything he had done wrong. So I'm like, why is he in court? And of course, looked it up and then seen everybody talking about it online. It's like, oh, defamation. I'm like, and at that point, I had stopped even looking into it. At that point, the only thing I really knew about it him getting his finger cut off or whatever, which obviously I've read about it now to know what that was all about. But I'm aware of it now, more so from yesterday after we talked about it. So yeah, a little new to me.
Yeah, and I think a big debate that I've noticed from social media since the cases kind of picked up in prominence, more people talking about it on Facebook or Twitter, is that basically Amber Heard has effectively gone on wax and said that yes, she was basically physically hitting him. So that's been the real bombshell to me. Is there was a lot of threatening back and forth about from her to him, basically saying that no one's gonna you're a man in Hollywood. No one's gonna believe you if this actually comes to light.
No. It wasn't even that. From what I was reading, she was indicating that no one's going to believe you just because you're a white man, basically. That's what she said, essentially. Paraphrasing, of course. But the quote's out there. So it had nothing to do with him being in Hollywood, just because she felt like no one's going to believe him because he's a white man. Probably more so just the fact he's a man, which she's probably obviously not incorrect. So sorry to cut you off, but I wanted to put that out there.
No, I think the one thing that I've noticed is that I've observed women on my Facebook feed and my Twitter feed. They have been the staunchest the most vocal about her behavior and her behavior in this case, her behavior towards him. And so it's just very peculiar because, typically there's a lot of domestic violence situations where, number one, victims don't even come forward at all. And it's even more so rare when it's a man. And then here we are, because of basically an editorial that Amber Heard put out years ago. But everybody kind of knew in Hollywood she was talking about Johnny Depp. And that's really the crux of this matter. Johnny Depp, as many people know, kind of got blackballed. He got booted from Pirates of the Caribbean. He really hasn't had a sniff at the limelight as a result of that editorial piece. And now that it's come to light that basically, hey, she is also, she doesn't come to the table with clean hands. A lot of people are starting to reevaluate many of the things that she said during that time. And so that is what struck to me, is that just so blatant that she never thought in a million years that it would actually come back to bite her. And I think what is really illuminating is that so many women, ironically, coming to Johnny Depp's defense because they see these behaviors, um, and so in seeing this play out in real time during this court case has been insane. And of course, what I really don't like is that people are basically going back and kind of retconning the whole thing and basically saying that, oh, he's got these problems. Look at the other issues he's had, either related to drug use or drinking or anything like along those lines. And I'm like, okay, what if this is a situation where they're both wrong? Right? Like both things can be true. Like we're not seeking to, or at least I'm not seeking to absolve him 100% of anything. I'm simply stating, okay, this is not 100% as the way she drew it up originally. And for me, that's been the fascinating part of that case, is that often any sort of fallout from a marriage like that, it's often what this one person said, what this other person said, and somewhere in the middle is probably the truth. Thoughts on that?
So, question for you. So, obviously, what's in the news now is what's going on in the basically Johnny Depp's defamation trial when it comes to what's going on in the U.S. What are your thoughts on, if you were aware of this, what were your thoughts on the fact that in 2020, a British judge determined that there was overwhelming evidence, quote unquote, that Johnny assaulted Miss Heard repeatedly over the course of the marriage?
Right, but that's involving what does that involve? Is that a defamation case you're talking about, or is that what sort of case is that?
Appears to be like a actual legal case of some. Actually, no.
Well, we know it's legal.
It must
Yeah.
be a definite. Well, I don't think it was criminal because he obviously he's not in jail. But I don't know the answer to that. I didn't look at that much about it, so I didn't think that actually wasn't. I didn't find much about it when I looked. I didn't look very long, to be honest with you. I'm just asking from a perspective of like pretty much what you just said. That there's one side, there's another side. He says she's the abuser. She says he's done it. We have a judge agreeing to her side just 2 years ago. Different country, obviously, but that's where the case is heard. So I was asking your thoughts about the difference of what's going on in this trial, which seems to be going in the favor of Johnny Depp, or rather, we had this trial just from 2 years ago in a different country that went Amber's direction.
Yeah, I would want to know a little bit more about one, what the hell was brought up, because I'm curious if there's the same amount of a psychoanalysis on this side of the pond. It seems like there's way more surveillance on this one, or at least there's way more surveillance I'm aware of.
Well, I'll say this, man. So I guess getting to you pretty much hit on the one point I wanted to make about the story is that from what I was reading, just from the happening in this case in the U.S., it seemed to be a lot of he said, she said. Like I just said, she's the abuser, or I'm the victim. She's the victim. And again, none of us really know what's actually true, other than what's supposedly put out in court, which could be BS too. But the fact of the matter is, this seems to me like a celebrity version of what we see on Facebook all the time. People hash out their relationships on Facebook to be seen. They're just doing it in a courtroom. And to me, it seemed like their relationship wasn't very good. And obviously, it played out in very physical ways when it comes to Mr. Depp losing his finger, which wasn't her just actually gnawing it off with a knife. It was some other bottle throwing incident that Johnny got his finger hurt. So to me, that's just seemed to be what it is. It seemed like a very bad relationship where probably both of them are truly at fault, to be honest with you. And I'm not going to play the game of which one's more at fault because in this scenario, does it really matter? I'd say no. So that's my thought on this case in general. Yeah, it's just another case of showing you that celebrities have problems too when it comes to relationships. So to me, they're just taking it to court. So I really don't have much to say about this, to be honest with you. And I know it's not probably the best thing to say when it comes to a podcast, but to me, this is why I don't hold celebrities in high regard, because they have the same problems we do.
I mean, I'm not saying that.
I know you're not saying you're holding them in high regard, but what I'm saying is and I know it's going to seem like it's really insensitive to me of me, but I, it just is normal people problems that everyone has on an everyday basis. Unfortunately, it just happened to be because they're celebrities just playing out on in the public. To me, and maybe I should make it so much about Johnny and Amber as opposed to just situation in general. But unfortunately, that's why we're talking about it, because it is Johnny Depp and Amber Heard.
I feel like it's easy to point at the fact that we're talking about a high profile former couple. But for me,
Yeah.
what I'm seeing, like the fact that it's Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, the least fucking interesting thing about this. What's interesting about it to me is the psychoanalysis that's happening related to these personalities, the documentation that is being alleged. I mean, objectively, his profile took a hit when that piece came out. And so if it's not 100% as she said it was, and again, I need to be especially careful here. I'm like, listen, at no point did I say that he is absolved, because there's a good chance he's being an asshole too. But the perspective of a male being a victim in a high profile case in domestic violence does make it worth discussing, because it's not something we talk about a lot in our culture. So,
well, I mean, I will say this too, man. I made this comment to somebody on social media as well, is that I did read about the whole recording of Amber saying what we were saying earlier, that the fact that go ahead and tell people you're a domestic abuse victim, no one's going to believe you because you're a man, blah, 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 blah. Again, paraphrasing. But that's unfortunately, and this word I'm going to use probably may or may not be the correct thing to say, but I'll explain it if I need to. Unfortunately, that's, unconscious, sometimes conscious female privilege. The fact that obviously us men are viewed as the aggressors, we're viewed as the savages, we're viewed as the monsters in most cases, which is why many times, unfortunately, when police show up to a domestic abuse situation, we always have to be the ones to prove. I shouldn't say always. A lot of times we're the ones that have to prove that we're not the ones at fault. If indeed we were the ones not at fault, of course. So Amber, obviously, she put it out there verbally where somebody recorded it. But I have to also imagine she's not the only woman that's either feels strongly about that, has thought about that, or knows that can be used to their advantage if they so choose. Again, not every woman, choose to, use that in underhanded ways. But the fact of the matter is, it's a thought. Is what it is. She ain't the only one that thinks like that. I know for a fact that she's not. And she probably, if originally, she probably wasn't wrong. Obviously, since I was a judge in a different country that thought the same thing. So, but granted, obviously, like I said before, that could be the case of they're both abusers. They're both crying victim, as you say sometimes. So,
yeah, I think that's a good note to end on. Both parties could be partially wrong, and so
at least partially wrong, because they both could be fully in the wrong, for all we know.
All right, that concludes our discussion on the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard defamation case. Coming up next, we'll wrap up the show with our final thoughts.